Welcome back to Trades Talk, friends. We have an awesome guest in the studio today, Josh McMillan with Roebuck Landscaping out of South Carolina. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you on here, Josh, and I'm excited to dive in and talk a little bit about your company, what you do there as CEO, the people that you serve every day, and where you guys are headed. So first, let's talk a little bit about Roebuck and the company itself, where it's positioned, what you guys have done a lot over the last 24 months. Maybe walk me through, a little bit about the history of the company and then the most recent, transition or chapter you guys are currently in.
Yeah, so Roebuck is actually a small town in the upstate of South Carolina, so that's where our name comes from. Our history goes back even past earlier than the 60s. We were started as a greenhouse operation, a family business that had a son. Once he got out of college, he started getting into the landscape trade, and so the greenhouse operation actually had a landscape division. I joined the business in 1995, and I think I made the fifth employee of that division at the time. So not too hard to figure out who's doing the work in those days, right? The company continued to grow, or that division did, and in 1999 we incorporated into who we are now, moved on to a new property, and the business really just set sail from there. This may predate you a little bit, but the Southeast in the mid-90s, the whole fabric of our industry changed. If you remember, in 1996, the Olympics came to Atlanta, and I do remember that was a springboard for the Southeast. I mean, that just changed everything. So you've just really seen the industry evolve over time, just due to that influx of folks, being on the world scene, to say so. But anyway, as the business evolved, we started out just like anybody else in residential. Had a few very strong connections in the development world, and started leaning into commercial more. When 2008 came, this one relationship pretty much carried us through that. A local relationship that spans all over the country, even to where you're at in California. They do development work there. We didn't stay at home a lot. We traveled up and down the East Coast, but survived that. And by the time the recession was over, 2012, 2013, I mean, the Southeast hasn't looked back. I mean, everything in the Southeast is just exploding right now. So we're very fortunate for where we're located geographically. From there, our founder in 2022 wanted to start exploring to exit. I think he was 67 at the time. And we went through the full process with an investment banker, the whole deal. Ended up selecting a company that we were going to transact with. That deal fell apart on funding day, so we had to go back to the drawing board. Just went through a long process for about 6 months of trying to figure out what we were going to do. Ended up re-engaging with a private equity company and got that deal closed. So we essentially stayed in due diligence for 2 years, which if you know anything about due diligence, that isn't a lot of fun.
A lot of people listening know about it too. It's not a fun place to be. Can I ask you guys how you stayed focused on the day-to-day business throughout that 2-year period? Was that primarily your job to keep the day-to-day going, why the founder, kind of worked those relationships? How did you guys manage the two different priorities?
A lot of long days, and those haven't really went away as of yet. But no, I mean, at that time, our founder, he was very sales driven. We were operating, and I say we, I'm talking about our CFO. He's been with us for 20 years, John McGinnis, and he's my true right hand and my true north. I mean, he keeps me pretty well grounded, but he and I were handling all the day to day, and it's just a grind. I mean, it's just what we had to do. And no complaints. It was just what we did, and we actually built a lot of value in the business over that span of time as well. So it worked out for our founder as well. He actually ended up with a pretty large increase in business value from deal one to deal two. So
I can imagine. I mean, those just the last 4 or 5 years has been pretty good. I mean, our industry is growing collectively by 8 to 10% a year, and most of us have done better than that. So it's good to see it happen in this time period versus maybe like 2005 to 2008. That could have been a different story for you guys. So well done on timing. So when you guys partnered with the private equity company, how quickly did you become CEO? Were you CEO previous to that transaction, right after it? Maybe walk us through the timeline a little bit there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we were transacting, we just been on such a long grind. John, my CFO, and I. At that time, I really didn't have a lot of interest to stay in the business. Didn't really want to lead it effectively. I was COO prior to the transaction, but when that first deal fell apart, and we were in no man's land for 2 years, I was constantly making promises to our people. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. And the plan was for our equity firm to bring in a CEO. And after post-close, I just got to where, I got a little bit uncomfortable making promises I didn't know if I could keep. And went to our operating partner and said, hey, I've got plenty of gas in the tank. I want to chart vision and go. Went through a few assessments, and within we closed in June of 24, and they in December of 24 they gave me the position. So
wow. Well, congratulations on that, because I know a lot of PE firms, when they are planning to bring in an outside CEO, they're planning to bring in an outside CEO. Yeah. So for you to kind of build that trust, build that relationship, not just with your people, that hits deeply for me, because, when we're making those promises, we want to make sure those promises are upheld. Can you tell me a little bit about what an operating partner does as that kind of connection or contact for you and your financial sponsor, just for all the listeners to understand that position a little bit?
Yeah, for me, he is a mentor and a coach, and he is the liaison between myself and the private equity group. Now, make no mistake, I talk to them every week, and our chairman, he and I trade text, and so there's a good relationship there. But we just don't always speak the same language. Operators in PE don't speak the same language, and so our operating partner, if we're going into a board meeting, we'll send him kind of what our presentation looks like. And he'll say, well, think about this, or this is actually what they want to see and how it's framed. So he's there for, to help guide us as an operator in the past that's been involved, helping us understand the vocabulary and the frameworks, that sort of thing. So, but really a coach overall is what he is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I was in a peer group with the ACE peer group with Marty Grunder and mm-hmm. McFarland Stanford, and one of the company members, actually their person in our group was an operating partner from the private equity firm. So it was kind of a cool way to get a look inside of how the private equity world works. And I got to tell you, Stephen Benavides is his name. He's an incredible person, and he was able to speak both languages really well. He was able to talk to the operator, CEO, COO type, and then also go and talk about all the analyzation and private equity talk that you need to talk to keep the LPs and everybody happy. So it's an important position.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Early on, they asked us for strategic initiatives, and we were so far in the weeds talking about labor efficiency. I mean, it just didn't resonate. They wanted some bigger, 30,000 foot view initiatives, and just trying to figure all that out. And we've learned a lot over the last 2 years and all the way through the process. So it gets better every week.
Yeah. So, all right, summarizing the timeline here for the listeners, 2022, you guys decided to start a process, hiring an investment bank, which basically investment banker is going to represent you and go out to market to go find an acquirer, correct? Is that kind of how
Correct.
that went down? And then 2 years of in between limbo, deal falling through. You guys close the deal in 2024. What is the last, we're here July 2026. What does the last 2 years look like for you, Josh? As now CEO, you're 18 months in to the CEO position. Have have you guys closed some deals? Have you purchased some other companies? Where are you located and where are you operated now?
Yeah. So yeah, the last 2 years have been a little bit of a blur, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We created our first. Well, with as soon as we closed, we created our first budget in company history. It's a little bit embarrassing to say for operating that long, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Created it. Part of the process I went through in December was started drafting our 3-year vision of where we wanted to go, and we've just about wrapped that up. And so I've drafted another vision for where we're heading, and operated the first year just trying to get our ducks in a row and get things lined up. We were fortunate enough to do a fairly large acquisition in Nashville, Tennessee, back in almost a year ago, and we've got some other things in the works right now. We expect 2027 to be very active. We're working diligently on getting our leadership team and our bench in the proper place to be able to do that. We've learned some lessons there over the last year, trying to get the right people on board. I think that's our biggest limiting factor, and that whether you're in PE or not, I think you can only grow as quick as or as strong as your leadership team is. As kind of John Maxwell call it, the law of the lid, right? So,
Yep.
but working towards that, and so yeah, one large acquisition. Hopefully, potentially get another one done this year, and then we're expecting to do numerous deals in 27. But also, we're heavily focused on continuing organic growth. We're currently 12 to 15% organically as well, because that's even more important than anything.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I think that's an area that a lot of people kind of forget when they start the buy and build strategy. There's so much emphasis on buying and building because that's where the real revenue production comes from. But the organic growth it's the lever we've pulled. It's the lever you guys pulled for nearly 40 years to get to where you were in 2024. You mentioned something that your 3-year plan you wrote at the end of 2024, you wrap that up. Do you mean you accomplished that 3-year plan in half the time?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Wow.
very, very close. Not quite across the finish line, but very close to it. And the one thing I started to learn as we started doing, going through the M&A process, is people want to know where you're going, and you got to think through that. And so we've got the vision. We built an org chart and career ladders, and that's powerful all the way through the business. And I know you're very big into that, having followed you for the last several months. You've got to paint that picture of what you're trying to do and get your folks engaged so they can see what's in it for them, because that's really all anybody, that's where you're engaging them, is showing them the opportunities that you can create and what their future looks like.
Sorry, guys, we got a little internet issue. But so, Josh, we were talking about organization charts. We were talking about giving your people clarity, that 3-year vision. What specifically made your vision with your team really resonate? Was there a certain thing that they connected to more than anything else within that 3-year vision?
I mentioned, I think the org chart, when you do the org chart and it shows the opportunity of what's out in front of everybody and the structure of where you're going, I did the best I could to lay out what we looked like 3 years down the road. I've read a lot of books over the last few years when we started through this process, and Cameron Herold wrote, Vivid Vision. And I tried to follow that process, just showing people what the future looks like when we get there. But I think if I had to say one thing got everybody engaged, I would say the org chart for sure.
All right, Josh. So you were able to accomplish your 3-year plan just about in 18 months, which had you basically go back to the drawing board and create a new 3-year vision, which only makes sense to keep the team charging ahead. When you went back to do the second revision or your new 3-year vision for 2029, what were some of the things that you did differently versus the first time you did it in 2024?
Different, I would say, just got very detailed and specific about what we were going to do, what markets, states, quantity, the number of people it would take to accomplish the goal. Locations, number of locations it would take. And so just trying to get very specific in what it was and really paint the picture of what it would look like 3 years from now. And again, it was a challenge, but I think the most rewarding part was trying to build an org chart to fit that growth, and start thinking that strategically makes you start thinking about how do you want to structure, is it regionally based or, where do you draw those lines? So that was it's a pretty neat exercise.
What is, if you don't mind sharing, what is that, high level 3-year vision that you would, maybe tell someone, a future investor or someone else, around the dinner table? What's the vision of the company over the next 3 years?
Yeah, so from a top line perspective, we would like to be in the 175 million range. That looks like that's going to span us around 5 to 6 southern states, 17 to 20 locations with 14 to 1,500 employees. Just depends on divisionally how things shake out, how our business mix stays. That's one thing I didn't cover. As of right now, we're traditionally heavier construction than maintenance, but we're trying to turn that over, obviously, for recurring revenue and company value. We're working to convert that. That doesn't necessarily mean we're slowing construction down, but just a little bit more focused on maintenance. And through the M&A world, we'll look more at trying to convert that mix through acquisition. So
makes a lot of sense. I had Jerry Scheel on the podcast actually
great guy
last week.
Great guy. Yeah.
Great guy, right? Just an all-around great guy and a real landscape professional. I think there's some CEOs out there who are extreme professionals. No disrespect there, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're landscape professionals. And the difference I've seen with the landscape professionals, such as yourself and Jerry and others, is I think you're able to really envision what that $175 million company feels and looks like on a day-to-day basis. And I can imagine you're able to explain that really, really clearly to someone maybe who's in a branch manager position, who has a potential to become that regional. How important is that internal growth? I mean, you've mentioned it a couple times already, but I just wanted to double click on the internal growth of your existing team. How important is that to you for the future of the company?
Yeah, so that vision is actually documented, right? We haven't shared that one external or through the business yet because we want to get the first one totally completed. But one of the number one metrics that we track and that we keep up with are internal promotions, and that's the legacy that I hope myself and our leadership team leaves one day, that we changed that many lives and created that much opportunity. The dollars are going to be what the dollars are, but that's what's left when you're gone is how many lives you've been able to impact. So, and that's very, very important to us. And, and our industry is just different. I think that. I mean, you mentioned Jerry Scheel. We went up to Cleveland and saw his operation last August, and it is just phenomenal what they're doing and how they're structured. They were about the same size we were when we transacted, and they have just taken off. So we're watching what they do and how they operate, and they're trying to model ourselves after that. And just to speak a little bit more on our industry, I reached out to Jerry and I said, hey, several months ago, was fortunate enough to come see your operation. It was great. Would love to pick your brain sometime. And he scheduled a call on a Friday while he was driving out to his lake, and we spoke, and I said, listen, I don't want to take up your time. I know you've only got 30 minutes. He says, man, I'll stay on the phone till midnight if you want. And that speaks volumes about our industry and what people are doing. I mean, I don't know where else you would, where else you would find that. So it's very, very genuine industry to be involved in. And hopefully I'll get to pay that forward at some point.
I mean, I think you are in a way today, sharing your journey, sharing what you guys are doing. I appreciate how open you are, with the vision and with where you're going, because believe it or not everyone's like that. I think they do themselves and their team a disservice by not being open, by not sharing. Jerry has been a mentor to me, and I've been able to talk to him a number of times. And every time I talk to Jerry, I change a little bit of what we're doing back at home, right? Or a little bit of tweak around that vision. I bring his name up specifically because I could hear a little bit about your plan and knowing what his company looks like. I think he's created a great standard, the business in a box, as he says, and the way he operates. I think it's a standard we all could emulate to some degree. We also have the vision of scaling and growing the company to multi-state, and there's a way to do it. And that's, I think, like, works really well. And then there's other ways that is maybe more focused on the financial outcome only and not taking the people into account. And if you only focus on the finance side and not the people, I think the finance actually becomes harder and harder to get your arms around. Have you found that as you've focused more on the people and more clarity around the vision, that the financial elements of the business have started to kind of fall in place as well?
Yeah, it has to. I mean, I don't, I guess anybody can take things too far, but I mean, if we're centered on being a profitable business, but we're going to put our people first, all that should fall into lockstep. My job is, I guess, technically value creation, but I was never told I couldn't create opportunity by doing it, right? And I think we all know, and I'm sure you know this as well. I've listened to just about everything you've produced. We can only take care personally of so many customers, right? So we have to take care of our people so they'll take care of the customers. There's no other way to scale. I mean, I can't touch but so many customers. So therefore we got to invest in our people. And I think if you do that the right way, how do you lose? So I agree.
Totally agree with that. And how do you do that day to day? Like, let's unpack that even a little bit more, if you don't mind, Josh. I think a lot of CEOs out there, especially CEOs, I'm going to just kind of throw a range of revenue out there between 3 and 7 million. It's a really hard place to be because you kind of are the lead salesperson, but you're also needing to do all the, inspiration and value creation stuff we're talking about. So for those CEOs, as they're wanting to scale to 10 million and really start to build that leadership team, how have you shifted your focus to your people while trusting that they're going to take care of the customer day to day?
Yeah, I think it comes back to something that we're still working on every day, building your processes and your procedures. If you've got that in place, then you can start to empower your people. Once you do that, you start to build trust, and people want to come to work every day, and who wants to come to work and not know if they're winning or not, right? Yeah. So if you've got the right processes and the right mechanisms in place, people are genuinely going to come and want to succeed. And by doing that, they know if you've set things up in the right way, they have to serve the customers to win. And so, but again, we're a sizable business right now, but we are still a work in progress when it comes to that. But I think the biggest thing to me is making sure that, as we go through time, that everybody that sets foot in our business understands it should be no surprise to them if they're not succeeding at work. That's our job to put those elements in place for them to understand that.
Help us understand that a little bit too, as far as the key performance indicators. What are you guys tracking as a company, weekly or monthly, that is really telling you and your team if you're winning or not winning? What's kind of the scoreboard you guys keep today?
Well, there's one big one in private equity. I shouldn't have to speak to that, right? So the famous
Six.
EBITDA, but that,
Yeah.
yeah, but that doesn't tie back down to your operational folks. So I think one of the biggest things we're constantly watching, or we speak in labor hours, not necessarily labor dollars, because they can't really, they control the dollars, but they really control the hours. So we're watching, labor hours through the divisions, what that looks like. Historically, because of construction, we've run a pretty heavy overtime model. And so we watch what we're doing with labor in regards to revenue. Looking at attendance, safety. We're very big on safety right now with some of the GPS and camera technology with folks being on telephones and texting. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Nobody wants to go tell a family that, that they've been hurt on the job or God forbid that worse than that, so we're big on the safety part, monitoring that. But labor hours, I say, is number one. And then from there, it's, just some of the normal, site audits, what we're doing in the sales function, pipeline, backlog coverage, those type things. But day in and day out, it's going to be hours for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a consistent performance indicator that we have tracked, that I think all the high performing companies out there track, especially if they're people focused, because the more production work we can get done in one labor hour, the more money we can ultimately get back to the team and back into their pockets. It's just it's a mathematic equation. 25 to 50% of every revenue dollar coming in is, going out in direct labor costs, depending on, of course, construction or maintenance. So the higher revenue per hour and the more production we can get done, that's what I tell my team is, look, if we can double our production per hour, we can double everyone's wages. It's easier said than done. Tell me a little bit about overtime, because I think that's a bit of a fallacy in our industry around overtime. Now it's different, construction versus maintenance, I'm sure, but what's your take on overtime as it relates to construction work? Do you embrace it? Do you watch it? Do you limit it? How do you use it? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, we historically have just gone wide open. Whatever the work says is what we do, right?
Yeah.
And but we're trying to get more regimented in what we're doing, and working with our project managers to make sure sites are indeed ready when we get there, and that we're just not bouncing around job to job and putting out fires, but. Typically we've used overtime as a retention method, but as our labor force starts to change, the old school guys love it, and some of the newer.
Yeah, but I like that mindset. That's interesting. We have the same one. Is it's wide open, and if our team wants to work and is able to be efficient for 60 hours a week, well, then, we just spread our overhead across 60 hours instead of 40 hours. And that really starts to actually reduce that overhead burden that we have per hour. So some people, I think, are really like, there's something that I don't know who it was. Someone was talking about how to reduce, overtime, because it's really important. It costs so much more money. This is like 2-3 years ago. And so I started running all the numbers, and I keep coming back to the fact that, we would rather have a maintenance crew run 6 10-hour days than hire a new maintenance crew and 3 new team members and a new truck and all the other stuff to just run. That's like the organic growth side too. How do you guys deal with organic growth? There's a good question I kind of stumbled upon. How do you deal with organic growth when it comes to maintenance routes? When you have that, you're like in between, it's almost time to hire another maintenance crew. You're not quite there. How do you guys make that jump from, let's say, in a branch, 4 maintenance crews to 5 maintenance crews? Is there a trigger point or a revenue guy that you're targeting?
Yeah, so all that's kind of location specific, but typically, and again, because we've historically run heavy overtime, one thing I can tell you: if folks get ingrained to working 40, these days, I don't know that they're going to want to stretch to 50.
Yeah.
So our maintenance crews do work overtime, but we try to flex it up as much as we can. Maybe do something. Typically, we're running 3 divisions: construction, maintenance, and enhancements. So if we have an enhancement crew that may have to chime in a little bit just to try and flex it until we can get to, say, if a average crew's doing $330,000 in maintenance, we'll try to get it to that $200,000 mark, before we invest, because, and that was a little bit of a learning curve too in our current PE environment. We're held to a CapEx covenant. And so you got that's an easy conversation in construction because the revenue per crew is so much higher. But if you start looking at that in a maintenance setup, it's a lot different. Now, if you got good partners and you're growing that much, I think they should work with you. I mean, otherwise, how do you continue to grow? So that's a good problem. I think lenders like to have those conversations. So, but yeah, I think the answer to the question is just trying to flex your crews up to a certain point that where it makes financial sense, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. Thank you for that feedback and that transparency too. It really helps operators out there hear this conversation, because, it's one thing if you're going from 40 to 41 crews. It's a whole different story when you're going from 4 to 5 crews, because you're adding, a whole bunch of overhead, and that's a tough decision. Tell us a little bit about the difference of how the company operated before the private equity investment and after the private equity investment. I think there's a ton of pros and cons that you could probably point to, but just overall, what are some of the differences of how the company operates day to day with a private equity investment?
Yeah. So before, very unstructured. Felt like as a business we were just going through the motions day to day. No plan, no vision, driving to one outcome for one person. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, it's what it felt like. Post transaction, our founder's not involved. He's on the board, but not involved. The environment is we're all driving for ourselves as everybody in the business. It's more of a unified motion. We're much more sophisticated in what we do on a day-to-day basis, but the industry as a whole is moving that way. I mean, you've got folks that are just, it's amazing. Well, even what you're doing and what you do inside of our industry, getting the knowledge out there. I mean, people are building businesses, choose to sell them or choose them not to. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But everybody's got this knowledge that they're building something of value. So we never know what tomorrow holds, right? And there's nothing wrong with building a business that has a good, strong, marketable value, whether you choose to sell or not. But I think just the sophistication in the business that we're constantly monitoring from day to day what we're doing through the KPIs, and we're just we're more grown up than we were. Probably the easiest way to put it. We should have ate our vegetables those prior 40 years. No telling what we'd have been worth at that time. So,
yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I have not interviewed anyone who has partnered with private equity and said, it's had its challenges, and it requires you to eat the vegetables and do some of the hard work that maybe isn't always the fun work, but it ultimately leads to a better operating business and really a better company to work for in pretty much all the cases that I've found in our industry. And I think private equity gets a bad rap because of some of the larger private equity investments that have happened, like maybe the Brightview situation people have kind of pointed to. But, ultimately it helps to improve the sophistication, like you said, and it gives a lot of people who would never have a chance of wealth creation, a chance to own a part of the company, even a small amount. Did you guys have a management pool or equity pool that you guys put together as part of this transaction, where you had a few additional people come on to the cap table and become equity holders?
Yes, we do. And one of the reasons I mentioned talking to Jerry Schill was they had just recapped, and that's in our future, probably in the next 24 months or so, something like that.
Yeah.
And just trying to understand what that process looks like, and my desire to be able to start thinking through what that next stage looks like, where we can take care of more people and throughout the business. I think back to what Rupert did
Yeah.
when they transacted. I think it was $28 million they distributed. What a story to tell. And, people being, I mean, that's some of those folks, that's life changing money for them.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the good parts of PE. There's certainly, I know, bad parts. I've read my share of books about that. But where the industry sits today is more about growing businesses, not coming in and cutting and eliminating. So and I hope that doesn't change anytime soon. But that it's just it gives a private equity. And Jerry, I'll be shocked if Jerry doesn't say this when you interviewed him. Private equity is a tool for us to use. I mean, obviously they own our business, but they know we're good at what we do, and it is a tool to achieve what we're trying to achieve, and they give us the resources to do that. And that's how we try to think about it. And we're just very fortunate we've got good partners and good investors and good lenders. I mean, we've got a really strong group that's supporting us.
That's great. That's actually, I think, word for word what he said. And he kind of explains private equity as kind of, you're partnering with the bank, those who are going to lend you money, help you get the M&A done, work through strategic plans. It brings a whole level of sophistication. And that's, I think, where our industry is going to stay for a long time, because it's so fractured. There's so many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of landscape companies. The numbers, people argue about that. How many landscape companies are there in North America? And until there is actual consolidation where, 5 or 6 companies own 30% of the market, which I don't know if it'll ever happen, I think the value creation strategy will always be to build up companies versus cost cutting. Once you get into the monopolization of certain industries, like, manufacturing might be one, or there's a few others, right? Like cable TV and stuff. Their only lever is to cut cost. To maintain that, 10% year-over-year EBITDA growth. For us, it's almost the opposite, right? The more we can invest in our people, the more we can invest in growth, the faster that EBITDA will ultimately grow year-over-year, which is, I mean, that's basically the goal is just to keep that going up, and then distribute a fair amount of wealth to the team and back to the investors. Everybody's happy, and you kind of restart the clock and go at it again.
Yeah, no question. And so, yeah, and it's pretty exciting to think that what we got, laid out in front of us, being able to think how many people we can impact the next time around. So that's a large driving force on our team right now, is trying to get to that point and hopefully really see some lives change, a few years down the road. So
yeah, so tell me a little bit about your reading. I read in the bio you definitely like to read. You have a good library. I love reading. I love business books. What's a book that you've read recently or in the past that just really you reference, it stands out in your brain on a regular basis?
Yeah. So the backstory to that, mine and your backgrounds are pretty similar. I don't have a lot of formal education,
Same,
and
yeah.
when we started going through the transaction process, no way I was going to sit at the table and not understand what was going on. So I just consumed as much information as I could, whether through books or podcasts or what have you. But the book that when I go back and think about, that's written in a way that I understand it, is by Keith Cunningham, who was the Rich Dad and Rich Dad, Poor Dad that Robert Kiyosaki wrote, is The Road Less Stupid. I mean, he has just got so many just down to earth, common sense principles. I've referenced that a lot, but I mean, I've been through so many. There's very few books that John Maxwell's written that I haven't read. It's all over the map. You mentioned Kaiser the other day, so I've been through two Kaiser books already, and I know where your mind's at on the efficiency and thing with how he scaled up through the construction projects and then on into the shipbuilding and stuff. So that was pretty interesting. So yeah, I still consume a lot of information. Probably, I think my list is, I don't know, 450 books or so, but it's been fun. I mean, it's neat to go back and study some of these very successful people, what they've done, what they've been able to accomplish, and it's all sitting there. We don't have the excuse of ignorance, right? All that stuff sitting out there for us to take in, and it's on us to do it. So, but it's been very rewarding to be able to devour all that and try to keep it making sense. I know Mark Bradley. I know you're a part of Landscaper and stuff, and he talks about when he was early in his business, he consumed so much he wondered if it was unhealthy. I could tend to agree with that. Sometimes you get too many initiatives or bright ideas going at one time.
Yeah, you read a book, the ideas in books though sometimes can just, it's interesting how they come at the right time too. It's so interesting how they show up in life. And I listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's a good way to use on my travel time. And I'm listening to something. I'm like, my gosh, this is exactly what I need to hear today. I'm going in to have this conversation with so-and-so that I need this perspective. And it's amazing. I was just listening to a biography of Larry Ellison and what he's built with Oracle, and the way that he operated as CEO was very ruthless, almost like too ruthless that some would say, and how he's kind of the one person that Elon Musk goes to for advice. And it's really interesting just to hear some of these titans that have built these amazing things like Henry J. Kaiser and others, and what the world was like back then as well, when they were building the Hoover Dam or they were building ships for World War II. It makes our problem seem a bit insignificant at times, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, but yeah, there's definitely there's folks like Jack Welch, that you hear some things that you may think's negative, but then you've got folks that spent their careers around him that just think he's great, and obviously he's very successful. But just learning, if you can just get one thing out of every book or every piece of information, it's meaningful over time.
I agree. I think Jack Welch, what a great entrepreneur, CEO, really, really intense. And I actually had I was meeting with a board for an HOA, and the vice president of the board, I was asking her where she worked, and I guess she was basically reported to Jack Welch for a number of years, and she was the only woman on that team. And she basically said that she would have to fight her way to the main table, because all the women would sit around the edges of the peripheral. This is, way back when. And she said she'd just get to the meeting early. She'd sit at the main table and say, I'm not moving. And Jack really respected that, that fight and that hunger. But she said it was intense. I mean, there wasn't a day that you wouldn't feel like you were getting fired or something. And, I think we could learn from some of those, take some positives and maybe leave some of the other stuff. But what about Patrick Lencioni? Have you read some of his books?
All of them. I think everyone. Yeah. So yeah. And when you say that name, I think the one word that jumps out to me is humble, and what that means, especially on our journey. What the definition, or what he may define humility is, and that's tough when you're in a business growing like our businesses are growing, and you're bringing folks in. If they're not humble, it typically will not doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's really interesting you bring that up. I think when you have a very humble team, and I think we should all strive for that, and you bring in someone who is really maybe good at their job but not humble, they can railroad that team so quickly because your team's so humble. They want to be respectful and ask for advice, and all of a sudden that person that came in who's not humble just railroads everything and erases all this progress. I've learned that the hard way. I think you as a CEO have to protect your team when you build a humble environment. It's something that's actually at risk all the time.
Yeah, there's no question. We paid the price for that
Yeah.
substantially, and I've referenced. I've heard the definition is not thinking less of yourself, is thinking of yourself less. And to me, that means that we're going to be servant leaders and push for our people, and our outcomes will come through that. And those folks that come in focused on themselves and their titles, and I think we've got a core around us now that won't tolerate it. And hopefully we never get that far, but should we, I think it'll be over pretty quickly. It's just not doesn't fit our culture right now.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about how you built that team to where you guys are at today and have that culture.
Yeah, so I mentioned essentially in the business before our transaction, it was our founder, myself, and our CFO, who's been with us for 20 years. And right a couple of months before we transacted, we hired a CHRO, Nicholas Ankrum, and man, he is the engine inside of our business. I was very clear with the recruiter that I didn't want a compliance HR person. I really wanted a recruiter and a people person, and that's what we got. And Nicholas has just been the engine. There's not hardly any positions that he can't fill. He's bought into our company, and he's very active on LinkedIn and forward looking, trying to keep our culture and brand moving forward. But he's the linchpin inside the business and how we build our teams, and he's very protective over it. And all that credit goes to him.
That's huge. Yeah. I mean, having someone on the team that you can empower to do that. And then as a CEO, we can just kind of be the cheerleaders helping to just cheer that human resource or that employee or people focused person on and let them kind of take the lead in that. And Josh, maybe talk about that. I think it's a thing I've struggled with, still struggle with, which is delegation of some of the most important things in the business. You got to do it to scale and to get to that next level. How do you hand over some of those big responsibilities to someone like I think it was Nicholas, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, so kind of if you carve the business up in three pieces through the people component, finance, and then operations, we're solid everywhere but the operational side, and most of that is self-inflicted just because I've been in the business. I don't know any other business. This is it. It's
Yeah.
my entire adult life, and not having put processes and procedures in place years ago, there's just so much key man risk. And the one thing that so we're putting those processes in place, and I also have a executive coach that I work with, and what he's worked with me tirelessly on is just stop, just sit back. If when people start brainstorming, just listen and be curious, and start trying to pull the stuff out of the folks. Although I could maybe get to the conclusion an hour quicker and just say, y'all need to do
Yeah.
this. And it's extremely difficult because I've got zero patience most of the time. So I struggle with that on a daily
I
basis.
hear that. Yep.
But it's just, you've got to just, and understand your people are going to make mistakes. Lord knows I did and continue to. So you just got to accept that. But just trying to let folks get to their own conclusions, and give them enough rope that they can make mistakes, and Uh, but that's it. I mean, the operational side is where all of our risk lives right now, is trying to turn that over. And our partners in Tennessee, the Great House Company, same thing, founder led, and the son in that operation stayed on, and he's fighting the same thing. And he and I, we talk about that religiously, and we're getting better, but we got a lot of work to do.
That's the truth. I mean, I've always said the strength of the CEO is the weakness of the company, and it shows up every time. Mine, for me, it's marketing and brand and sales is an area I really love, and you can ask our leadership team to rank those categories. If you were to include, sales and marketing as one of them, it would be Justin's the best at it, and without Justin, we're the weakest at it. And I think for you, like you said, operationally, it's just something that we have to work harder on. It's funny. It's the thing we're usually naturally the best at, and it's the area that we struggle the most in to delegate. It's a good point, good pattern to point out.
Yeah, and it's not healthy. You can say, it's really not. I mean, if something happened to me tomorrow, you think about I talk about how much we care about our people and what we're doing. It's really not healthy to have that much risk in the business. And so we've got plans in place that will be better as we move forward. And again, that's part of the reason for building the bench depth that we're working through now. We've got some key hires weeks away and working through that. So it's incumbent upon us as business leaders to make sure that we've got that risk and those responsibilities spread out. And if we don't, who's going to want to work for us? Nobody wants to work for a micromanager, and so it's overall just a good, healthy way to operate the business.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So with so many people out there listening and you guys looking to continue to scale on your acquisition roadmap over the next 2 to 3 years, what is some of the things that you believe as a CEO that if someone's listening and they're thinking, I think there's a lot of people looking for platforms to partner with right now and over the next few years, what are some of those values or beliefs that you hold true today that people may listen and hear and kind of align with, that may lead them to reaching out to see potentially if there's a fit down the road for you guys to partner? Just maybe unpack that for me a little bit, if that makes sense.
It's all around the people. If I'm sitting with an owner in front of people, and typically within that first few minutes, if he's not talking about his people, it's probably not the right table for us to be at. I mean, we've got some baggage in our business from the transaction and all that, and it's just not. Again, I mentioned we're pulling for one common cause, and it'll have outcomes, financial outcomes, and what have you. But that's at the end of the day, we have an obligation to our people, and most of the time, and fortunately, out of the majority of those conversations, man, you'd be surprised how many people are out there that really love their businesses, love their people, and how they step up to take care of them. I mean, it's really it's a one-off that folks aren't that way. So it's again, kudos to our industry on that.
Yeah, no, you've been consistent on that for the last hour here as we've chatted, and I really appreciate that. I definitely share that at a deep level, and we've gone as far as to walk. We still have our giant goal of 2035. We want to become the $1 billion company, but we've started to say, look, if we only become a $50 million valued company, but we get to $100,000 minimum wage, like, we'll be happy. That will be the legacy more than the $1 billion value. Just to help the team understand, if you are in a situation where you're trying to decide, do we grow into this new relationship? Maybe it's a low bid general contractor with a big region, but we're not going to be able to increase our wages, versus maybe a more boutique contractor that's going to allow us to charge more and have negotiated pricing. Let's lean more to the boutique and stay smaller if needed, but to attain a higher wage and ultimately provide a more quality experience for our people. And I think our customers here, if they are listening to me say that, I think they understand and respect the focus around people versus us sitting here and saying we're client focused and customer centric. If you're people focused, then I think by definition you are customer centric. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And to your point about the $100,000 wage, think about the Rupert example I mentioned. I mean,
Yeah.
I know Rupert's a very top tier company in the revenue marks, but the only thing I remember is what they did for their people. And there's a lot to be said for that. So, and again, who's going to complain if you guys don't hit $1 billion, but you've set that mark for $100,000 minimum wage? That'll ripple through the industry, and you'll always be remembered for that.
That's true. All right, Josh, as we wrap up, man, I asked everybody for a trade secret here on the Trades Talk podcast. So I'll ask you for yours. What's your trade secret you want to leave our guests with today?
Yeah, so I've thought about that, and I think, I think what I would say is, especially not so much the founders, but everybody working inside of our industry for somebody else, and knowing my background, how I came up, don't ever think you're owed anything, because you're not. You have to go in and grind it out every day and bring value every day. And I think if you operate with that mindset, there's going to be times you get more than you deserve, and there's times you're not going to get what you feel like you deserve. But if you're truly working with that mentality, that open-mindedness, and you're pushing all the time, chances are it's going to work out in your favor. But it's not owed to you. Nothing is owed to us at this. It's just not. And so that's where I would leave it. And if I can, 2 things for you. One, good luck. I know you got a baby coming, so
Thanks, sir.
Good luck with that. And out of all your episodes, and you've had some great episodes. One, the I think it was Austin on Lucky in Florida. I've heard of him and was listening to that and got almost all the way to the end, and he said his age, and I about drove off the side of the road. I couldn't believe he was that young. That shows you how sophisticated this business, these industries, or our industry is. That was just amazing to me. But I think the 2 best episodes you've done is with your father. That was great.
Wow,
just listening to that and listening to the day-to-day struggles of the business. I mean, we've all lived through that, and that was just amazing couple of hours there. So congratulations to you guys.
I really appreciate that. Sincerely. Thank you. It was, and thanks for the trade secret. That I'll just say that advice of show up like you're owed nothing every day. That's like the, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, that type of mindset where it's like, you've got to earn it every single day. Nothing is free. And it really is, like interviewing my dad, I was able to understand more than I ever have just how difficult it must have been in his, because neither my mom or dad come from entrepreneurial backgrounds or anything else. It's just hard work, every day. So getting the opportunity to interview him, that was pretty special for me. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I hope you keep it up. You're important to the industry. So you've got a big microphone. You use it well. So
thank you. Thanks for coming on. And I'm going to keep doing that. This is something I absolutely love. It's a passion of mine. And getting to talk to you today is exactly why I love doing this stuff. It's fun to tell the story and to swap ideas. So Josh, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Trades Talk, where the next generation of disruptors comes to raise the bar. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in the trades who's ready to level up. For more tools, insights, and community, follow host Justin White and join the movement at jwhitegroup.com.